those are the girls. What are they wearing? They're wearing girls' clothes. Well, how do I know they're girls' clothes? Just go to the store. They know how to sell you girls' clothes. How about the boys? Oh, the boys. If there's anyone who is a little thin and flabby, they went to the gym. So they sitting down and they got some muscles they can show you. And they've got, oh, yeah. And they might grow a beard and a mustache because that's a manly thing to do. Okay, so my point is apparently the XXXY chromosomes are insufficient because when we wake up in the morning, we exaggerate whatever feature we want to portray the gender of our choice.
This is going to go down in history as Neil deGrasse Tyson's absolute worst take. Welcome to the Midnight Paradigm. We're dedicated to winning the battle for the soul of the nation. In this video, I want to talk about Neil deGrasse Tyson in his interview with Stephen A. Smith, where he basically contradicts himself in a way that I just got to call it out, man. So without further ado, man, let's get into it.
Correct. And so the problem comes about, and one of the chapters of the book is called Truth and Beauty. And I describe what I call 3 different varieties of truth. So one of them is a personal truth. And this is the kind you find within religions. It's if Jesus is your savior, you know that to your bones. No one is going to take that from you. However, if you require that someone else think exactly that same way in a free society, that will take an extraordinary act of persuasion, typically, or in the limit, all-out war.
Now, keep in mind, we're talking about this in the light of the woke ideology of transgenderism. Now, transgenderism falls directly under a personal truth. It is a truth that one carries through their own experience. No one's denying the experience of someone feeling like they were born into the wrong body. That's not an experience that anyone can deny. You are experiencing that. However, just because you are experiencing it doesn't mean the rest of us are experiencing it.
All right. That's a personal truth. Another kind of truth I'd say is like a political truth. This is something that becomes true in your head because it got repeated so many times. All right. So, by the way, propaganda is that. So you can be brainwashed by repeated information that may or may not be true. Typically, when it's weaponized in this way, it's not true, but they have to get you to believe it to then take action.
Trans women are women. Now, when we hear that, we all know that that is not true at all, but it's repeated so much with so much fervor that we are almost like coerced into having to accept it. And some of the more weaker minded individuals are actually going to hold it and believe it as a truth. But in reality, it's not true. It has no basis in reality. It is just something that the woke ideologues use against their political opponents.
A third kind of truth is what scientists do. It's objective truths. And these are truths, when we discover what is true and experiments verify it, oh my gosh, it is true whether or not you believe it. It seems to me, if you're going to base legislation and laws on some kind of a truth, it should be on objective truths that actually apply to everybody.
For the audience that might not understand why transgenderism isn't an objective truth, I'm going to explain it to you. If you were to present to let's say an archaeologist or an anthropologist a human skeleton, a complete human skeleton, and present the DNA along with that human skeleton, there are several things that anthropologist or archaeologist can look at to determine whether or not that skeleton is a male or a female. You cannot do that with gender because it is not rooted in science. Gender is an abstract concept developed by society that was intended to mirror the biology, which is sex. Another piece of rhetoric or political truth that we get from the woke ideologues is that, sex and gender are not the same. They are correct in saying that, but they are also using that to mislead the audience into believing that sex and gender can be opposite. Sex and gender are not the same. but gender mirrors sex. So whatever your sex is, your gender also mirrors that.
We're living in a time now where you're born a man and you can say, I believe I'm a woman, and there's a sex change. Same thing with a woman becoming a man, those kind of things. How does that fall into, because that doesn't fall under quote unquote religious beliefs?
No, Stephen A., that's exactly what it falls under. It would fall under Neil deGrasse Tyson's standard of personal truth. And under the umbrella of personal truths falls religious truths. So it definitely would fall under a religious truth. It's a truth that this person has accepted based on their personal experience.
All right. So if you look at our chromosomes, all right, they can be XX or XY.
Right. That I know.
And that's binary. That is, there's male and there's female. And there's some variance on that. That's a very small percentage of the total. I want to focus on those two for the moment. That's male and female. Okay. So now let's move past that and say, do those chromosomes manifest in society?
Whoa. Slow down, Neil. Do they manifest in society? I feel like you skipped over some things. Why not? Why aren't we asking, do they manifest in biology? Why are you skipping over to society? Because if you skip, because the basis of this whole conversation, when we're talking about transgender ideology, we need to know if XX and XY manifest in biology, and how so. How do they manifest in biology? Because if we're dealing with a sick society, then that sick society more than likely will not acknowledge what is occurring on the end of biology. But a healthy society would. Now, we got to ask ourselves, which sort of society is Neil deGrasse Tyson promoting? We have to assume it's a sick society if he's willing to jump clean over the biology aspect of it all. Neil, before you talk to us about how sex manifest, or XX and XY chromosome manifest in society, first tell us the extent to which they manifest in biology.
Okay. All right. So stay with me now.
I'm staying.
Do they manifest?
I'm right here.
So now I did this experiment. I was on the New York City subway. It was in the winter. Everyone has a big coat on. And so I'm just looking at heads sticking out of the winter coats. And I said, why do I know who's male and who's female as I go down the line? This was just a simple question I asked myself.
Neil deGrasse Tyson just described an experiment that he did. Now, he's an expert in science. He described an experiment that he did. And this experiment was based on his own personal observation.
Okay, so one of the things we know from research in psychology, as well as just practical matters in the conducting of scientific experiments, is that one of the lowest forms of evidence you could possibly invoke is eyewitness testimony.
But that's what your experience is based on.
Because it's one of the highest forms of evidence in the court of law, which disturbs me greatly. Mm-hmm. So if you come from a lab to a science conference and say, this is true, we say, how do you know this? Because I saw it. Well, that's really the end of your talk. So now I did this experiment. I was on the New York City subway. It was in the winter. Everyone has a big coat on. And so I'm just looking at heads sticking out of the winter coats. Well, that's really the end of your talk. Those are the girls. What are they wearing? They're wearing girls' clothes. Well, how do I know they're girls' clothes? Just go to the store. They know how to sell you girls' clothes. There's a whole section for just girls and boys. How about the boys? Oh, the boys. If there's anyone who is a little thin and flabby, they went to the gym. So they sitting down and they got some muscles they can show you. And they've got, yeah. And they might grow a beard and a mustache because that's a manly thing to do.
And he says because we can superficially alter our appearance to look more manly or look more womanly than the standard truth, which is sex, XXXY, it's insufficient. This is embarrassing, it's a travesty, and it's crazy.
Dude, you saved my ass.
Not yet. Huh? The heat-resistant tiles are peeled off. The temperature's rising.
The landing wheels aren't retracting.
Yep. And the number 2 nozzle won't work either.
What? Are you for real? We can't live without them. I knew I
Whatever happens,
happens. I'm gonna die.
you.